Well, hello everybody and welcome to Geoff's baking blog. Today I'm going to make some chocolate ginger cookies or cakes. You can call them cookies or cakes, really. This is from a recipe that I saw in a Costco magazine, which I have adapted slightly. They called them chewy cookies, but I don't think they're chewy at all. I think they're soft and cake-like rather than chewy. In fact, I have here one of them which I've just broken open. I made some yesterday, and it's not chewy in the least. It's slightly crisp on the outside because there's some demerara sugar sprinkled over it, and it's soft in the centre, but it tastes very, very good. So I'll call them chocolate ginger cookies or cakes, and you can choose whatever you want to call them. It's very simple to make them. It takes a bit of time because once you've made the dough, you need to chill it for at least 2 hours. So it might be a good idea, if you want to make them, to make the dough in the evening and chill it overnight and then bake them the following day. That will work just fine. I'll go on to the ingredients, and for these I have 225 grams of plain flour. That works out at 1.5 cups based on scooping packed flour into a 250 milliliter cup. I have 175 grams, 1.5 sticks plus 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter which I've melted. I have 175 grams, 1 cup of dark chocolate chips. You could use milk chocolate, but I'm using 51%, so semi-sweetened cocoa. In fact, there seems to be something in there from the bag. So that's 1 cup of those chocolate chips. I have 60 grams, which is half a cup of cocoa powder. I have 70 grams each of soft dark brown sugar and caster sugar. You could use all caster sugar or granulated sugar. You could use all dark sugar or light brown sugar. It's up to you. It will affect the flavour profile because the dark sugar has that molasses flavour in it. Then I have 40 millilitres of black treacle or molasses, and I want another 40 millilitres of golden syrup, and that makes a total of 1/3 of a cup of those two liquids combined. So I'm simply going to fill up my 1/3 cup measure with the golden syrup. That's to reduce my washing up, basically. So that's those two liquids. I have 20 grams, 1.5 tablespoons of what I have here is crushed ginger. Now you could use fresh ginger and grate that until you have 1.5 tablespoons, and that would be fine. If you don't have that either, you could add more ground ginger into the recipe that I'm putting in. I have 5 millilitres, which is 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. I have 1 medium egg, which would be large in the USA, and then I have 3 grams, half a teaspoon of salt, 3 grams, 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 3 grams, 1 teaspoon of ground ginger, and 4 grams, 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And then I also have here some demerara sugar. I've actually got about 50 grams, I think, of demerara sugar. And basically that is, once I've made the dough, I'm going to chill it, as I say, and then roll it into balls and roll the balls in that sugar before I put them on the baking tray. You could use granulated sugar for that. Demerara sugar or cane sugar like this is good because it tends not to melt in the heat in quite the same way, so it stays on the outside, leaving that crunch. So the first thing we need to do is to mix our dry ingredients together, excluding the sugars, and then mix the wet ingredients together. So what I'm going to do is put my spices into my flour and the baking soda and the salt, like that, and then I'm going to sift the cocoa powder onto the top. And the reason for sifting is that cocoa powder does tend to clump, and I want to make sure that I've broken any lumps down, basically. So that's good. And with the cocoa powder in the flour, I've got some on the counter there, as I usually do, I'm simply going to mix that around with my whisk until it's nicely incorporated. It will get mixed, of course, as we mix the dry into the wet ingredients, but this just makes sure that it's fairly evenly distributed, and that's good enough. So I'll set that to one side for a moment, and then I'm going to mix the wet ingredients together. And so for that I'm going to put my butter into the bowl, and a larger bowl would be better, but I'm using this glass bowl so that you can see that little bit better. And into the butter I'm going to add the sugar, and I'm going to use a whisk just to mix those and get them combined. And then I'm going to add in my black treacle and my golden syrup. And I need a spatula of some sort to scrape that, in all probability. And that's good. So I'll mix that in. And then I'm going to add in the vanilla and my crushed ginger and my egg. And I'm going to mix those until they're fully combined. So the flour mixture with the cocoa powder and the spices can also go in now, and I'll fold those in, and as they're all folding and coming together, I will add the chocolate chips and stir those in as well. And that's coming together quite nicely. So I'll sprinkle the chocolate chips on the top, and I'll carry on folding until everything is mixed nicely. Scraping down to the bottom of the bowl to make sure that there's no dry mixture left behind. And that's all I have to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scrape off that spatula into the bowl. Then I'm going to cover the bowl with some plastic wrap and put it in the fridge and chill it for at least 2 hours. And then once it's chilled and I'm ready to go on to the next step, which is to make the chocolate ginger cookies, I will preheat my oven to 180 Celsius. That's 160 Celsius with a fan, 350 Fahrenheit. And I will line some baking trays. I'll line 2. I may have to do this in 3 batches, but I'll line 2 baking trays with parchment paper ready to take the dough. I let the dough for the chocolate ginger cookies or cakes chill, and it's actually been about 3 hours that mine has been chilling. So I now have my oven preheating at 180 Celsius, 160 Celsius with a fan, 350 Fahrenheit, and I'm going to divide the dough. I've done 2 already, and they're about walnut size, I would say. They actually weigh about 31 grams each if you want to weigh them. And so I'm going to take an amount like that. I'm weighing mine, but you don't have to. And I'm just going to weigh it off so that that amount is 31 grams. I'm going to roll that in my hand to form a ball. And of course, the more chocolate chips you have in a particular ball, the different the weight might be. So you don't have to be too accurate. And having rolled it into a ball, I'm going to put it into my demerara sugar, and I'm going to coat the outside with demerara sugar and place it on my baking tray, making sure that I leave a gap of at least 2 inches between the balls. So here I have 20 rolled out on 2 baking trays, and I have enough here for another 10 on another baking tray, which I will bake in a separate batch. So I'm going to put those 2 trays into the oven, and I'm going to bake them for 12 minutes. The edges should become quite firm, the centres will still be soft, they will flatten but still remain slightly domed, and they will crack a little bit. And I will leave them on the baking trays once they come out of the oven for 10 minutes. Then I transfer them to a wire rack to cool completely, and when I've baked all 30, I'll come back and we'll have a taste. I baked the chocolate and ginger cookies or cakes for 12 minutes. I allowed them to cool on the trays for 10 minutes and then put them onto a wire rack. And this is what they look like. So they baked up quite nicely, and they're going to be nice and soft inside. So I'll have a taste of this one. It's crisp on the outside, soft in the centre, with that lovely chocolatey flavour to it, and then the hit of the ginger on the back of your throat is very, very good. Now, I used crushed ginger, as I mentioned, and you can use that, or you can grate some fresh ginger. But if you don't have either of those, you can just increase the amount of dry ginger that you put into the recipe, and that should work fine. So I hope you've enjoyed this recipe, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for the recipe, and I'll put a link below the video as well, and I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.